Psalm 29 verse 1 to 11, through the Bible. Psalm 29, Part 1. Theme: The voice of the Lord in a thunderstorm. The psalm before us is a nature psalm. It is not the first nature psalm, as we have already read Psalm 8. When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars, which thou hast ordained, which is a psalm to be read on a good clear night. Then we read Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Then he likens the sun to a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. That is a daytime psalm. Now we come to a psalm that describes a storm. In this psalm is the gloom of the tempest, the clap of thunder, the flash of lightning, and terror on every side. Several years ago, a hurricane which they named Camille hit the Gulf Coast. She hurled her might on the other side of New Orleans, around Gulfport, Mississippi. Camille caused millions of dollars worth of damage. In an apartment in that area, several couples decided to have a hurricane party. It was a great big beer bust, and I suppose they all got drunk. I understand that most of them were killed when the storm hit. It is too bad to go into eternity like that. I wish they had read Psalm 29 instead. My friend, if you are frightened in a storm, rather than trying to get your courage from a bottle, I suggest you look at this magnificent psalm. It has a message in the time of storm. The structure of this psalm is quite interesting. This is Hebrew poetry of the highest order. Ewald said of this psalm is elaborated with a symmetry of which no more perfect specimen exists in Hebrew. Delitzsch called it the Psalm of Seven Thunders. Perrown said this about it. This psalm is a magnificent description of a thunderstorm. Its mighty march from north to south, the desolation and terror which it causes, the peal of thunder, the flash of lightning, even the gathering fury and lull of the elements, are vividly depicted. So Psalm 29 is a song of Hebrew poetry describing a storm. Hebrew poetry is not attained by rhyming. When we think of poetry, we think of rhymes. We like the sentences to end in words that sound alike. Here is an example of one of our modern ditties. I shoot the hippopotamus with bullets made of platinum. If I used lead ones, his hide were sure to flatten him. That is not exactly Shakespeare, but it is our kind of poetry. Hebrew poetry is attained by what is known as parallelism, which is repeating a thought in a different way and generally amplifying and enlarging upon it. The psalm sweeps along with all the freedom and majesty of a storm. There is sort of a lilting triumph here, a glorious abandon, a courageous exultation. The first two verses are the prologue. Give unto the Lord, O ye mighty, give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. David lifts our thoughts to the very highest. Now, the epilogue is the last two verses. The Lord sitteth upon the flood. Yea, the Lord sitteth king forever. The Lord will give strength unto his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. The storm with all its fury lashed across the land, but Jehovah was still in control. And, my friend, in the storms of life, he is still in control. Before we look at this psalm in detail, let me say a word about the subject, which is developed in verses 3 to 10. 7 times the voice of the Lord is mentioned. The voice of the Lord is upon the waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaketh the cedars, and so on. Notice the setting of this psalm. David wrote it. He was an outdoorsman. He was not bottled up in an office. He was not held down to a throne. However, when this storm came, he was not outside. He was in Jerusalem, a city that was beautifully situated. David was in his cedar palace built on Mount Zion, the highest point. He could view the whole land. He could look to the northeast and see the clouds beginning to gather and watch as the storm was getting ready to break. I think most of us are acquainted with the geography of the Holy Land. If you are not, turn to the map in the back of your Bible that shows the location of Jerusalem. As you look at your map, you will see that the Mediterranean Sea is on your left to the west. Up north there are two ranges of mountains, the Lebanon and the Anti-Lebanon. There is Mount Carmel up there at Haifa and Mount Hermon, the Sea of Galilee on the east, the Valley of Esdraelon, the Jordan River, and the Dead Sea. Then there is Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim in Samaria and the rugged terrain lying immediately north. Bethel, Ai, and Anathoth are just north of Jerusalem. In Jerusalem you look to the west and see Joppa, to the east you see Jericho, and to the south you see the wilderness of Judea, frightful and ominous. David and Amos knew how to survive in that wilderness. A bishop from San Francisco several years ago didn't know, and he perished there. From David's palace on Mount Zion, the highest point in the city of Jerusalem, he could look over this landscape.